see. Let me just make sure I have everything ready. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're just about to get started with our Writing a Food Safety Plan workshop. I'm just getting things set up. Let's see, got that. And chat open. All right. So welcome everybody to Writing a Food Safety Plan Part 1. I'm Emily, I work at New Entry, and New Entry's mission is to foster resilience in local, regional, and national food systems by training a generation of farmers to produce food that is nutritious, culturally connected, and accessible to all individuals. Just a quick tech check and introductions. If you can rename yourself, and you can add your pronouns if you like, then add to the chat your name, your pronouns, your farm name, and where you're located so we can get to know each other. And please mute yourself unless you have a question, and this meeting is being recorded. And if you have a question as we're going along, you can either raise your hand, put your question in the chat, or take yourself off mute and interject. I know it's late, you might be eating dinner. It is sometimes nice to see faces, so if it's not too intrusive, it's great for you to have your camera on so that we can see if you think things make sense, or if you seem lost, or if you just think that things don't make sense at all, or you feel very lost. Please let us know in the chat and we can work to figure that out for you. Surveys, there's going to be a quick survey at the beginning of this workshop and then a survey at the end. I make the surveys super duper quick and very, very easy. They're part of how we fund these workshops. So please help us by filling them out. It's really just like, was this workshop helpful? Do you think you will write a food safety plan? And we will have a part 2 of this workshop. And there's a question in there about what you'd like to see in the second workshop as well. And I'm going to pull up the first poll. So just what is your experience with writing or using a food safety plan for your farm? Either you're brand new, you've started, you have a draft, maybe you have an active plan, or you're a pro. And that'll just kind of give us an idea of what everyone's experiences are here, and just kind of get an idea of that. So you do have some upcoming events. The second part of this workshop is going to be on not 128, that should be 228. And since you have registered for this workshop, you're automatically registered for the second one. So you'll get reminders emailed to you about the second one. And then we also have a high tunnel tour coming up at Farmer Dave's on 224. So that should be pretty fun. So today's workshop, we have Steve Pillis from MDAR and Leah German from the New Entry Incubator. She's the incubator manager. I've got a quick agenda for us all from 6 to 6:10. We're doing a welcome and introductions from New Entry. From 6:10 to 7-ish, we've got a presentation from Steve. Then at 7 to 7:15, Leah is going to share New Entry's food safety plan and some templates that she likes. And we'll have some dedicated Q&A time at the end. But again, if you have any questions as we're going along, feel free to raise your hand, put your question in the chat, or come off mute and ask. If you are farming vegetables and you have 2+ years of growing experience, we can also pay you to share your financial records. We're doing a study just to figure out what is normal or how much money small scale vegetable farmers can make to help people improve their farm business plans, find out at what scale they can become profitable, and develop strategies to increase profitability. So just by sharing your financial records, you can get paid, which is great. So you can either drop your email address in the chat and I can connect you with more information, or you can email me at emily.round@tufts.edu.
I will also say, as a plug for the benchmarking study, not only you get paid for your financial information, but you also get someone bugging you for it, which means you have to complete your records every quarter. So if you want a little alarm clock for that kind of stuff. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, and you'll also get a handout that shows you where your farm sits in comparison to other farms financially, which is pretty cool. And then I'll put the slide up at the end also. To prepare for part 2, we'll probably just have you word vomit everything you know about your farm's potential food safety risks into a document your current practices to reduce risks, and take a stab at filling out a food safety plan template. And then I'll put mine and Leah's contact information up at the end also. Let's see. All right, I'm going to end the poll. And just so we can all kind of see where we're all at, nobody here's a pro. That's great. I don't know if you'll be a pro by the end of today, but you'll definitely have some idea of where to go, I think. I hope. So it seems like a lot of people are pretty new or you've started it, and that's great. I'm glad that you're here to learn. Food safety is very important because as this little emoji graphic here says, poop plus vegetables equals little vomit face. So this is kind of what we're trying to avoid. This is the most simplified version of it that I got from another worker at New Entry. And I'm glad you all are here tonight. I think that's all I got for my introduction. So Steve, you can take over and share your screen and we can get going.
Great. Let's see. Okay. Looking good? Cool. So to briefly reintroduce myself again, my name is Steve Pillis. I'm with the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about audits. Some of you may be familiar with our audit program, the Commonwealth Quality Program, briefly about inspections, and then that all kind of correlates into writing a food safety plan to sort of help you prepare with those things. So a big part of our audit program, the Commonwealth Quality Program, is having that food safety plan on hand. And so to give you a quick background, I'm just going to talk about the brief history of third-party audits, which has ultimately led to CQP as we have it now. And so some of you may be familiar with the USDA GAP-GIP program. That's supposed to say 2002. But the short story is that a number of years ago, wholesale buyers decided that they wanted to have some sort of assurance that the produce farms they were buying from were doing things the right way. And so the USDA created the USDA Good Agricultural Practices program in 2002 to establish an audit program where they come out, they conduct an audit, and then they give you your certificate that you then pass along to your buyers. And so the GAP-GIP program worked for a number of years. And they eventually evolved the program to encompass more food safety practices. There you have the USDA Harmonized GAP program. And over time, that's evolved again to the Harmonized GAP Plus program. And they have a couple other programs as well. And so why is this important? Around the same time, Massachusetts created the Commonwealth Quality Program. So again, some of you might be familiar with this program. It is Massachusetts GAPS. And it was initially incepted as a local alternative to the USDA GAP program. At the time, it was geared more towards local promotions and included sectors like produce, maple products, cranberries, aquaculture, lobster, dairy, and forestry. Produce, maple, and cranberry are still active. Eventually, like the USDA program, it evolved to incorporate more food safety standards. And over time, as you may or may not be familiar with the produce safety rule and federal regulations out and about, we took the produce safety rule and we integrated that into our Commonwealth Quality Program. So by default, if you have an active CQP certificate, you are compliant with the produce safety rule. And we now have about 110 produce farms as part of the program, 25 cranberry bogs, and 5 maple products. Other third-party audits, just for curiosity's sake, some of you may be familiar with Primus audits, which are a more intensive audit program. Those are more focused on those large-scale farms. That GFSI certification that you see there is mainly geared towards farms that are shipping product internationally. Some of you may be familiar with the Leafy Greens Marketing Agreement, which is a special checklist geared towards large California leafy green farms. That specific is mainly geared towards leafy greens growing practices and mitigating the risks that are specific to those and those growing practices. And then organic certification. So some of you might be organic certified, and you may have that third-party audit experience without even realizing it. So, and the produce safety rule, I'm not going to dive too deep into. If you want to learn more about the produce safety rule, I highly recommend that you take the Produce Safety Alliance Grower Training course. It's a great course. I used to be a teacher for it. I see Lisa McKeague is in this session. She's a teacher for it in Massachusetts as well. And I believe New Entry does trainings too. But the brief of the produce safety rules, the FDA determined that it was time to regulate produce farms. And so they determined that certain produce farms were eligible for an inspection based on certain criteria. And eventually they set up cooperative agreements with the states to set up produce safety programs and then conduct inspections. And so in Massachusetts, you have the produce safety rule inspections and you have the audit programs, and they all can be, it's all very helpful to have a food safety plan to help prepare yourself for those things. And so I'm going to dive into the food safety planning. So what is a food safety plan? A food safety plan is essentially a guide or a summary for your farm. It defines your practices, it defines your policies and your SOPs, and it's a great place for you to consolidate your records, your logs, and your certificates. I like to say that if you have somebody that comes off the street, they should be able to read your food safety plan and get a good sense of what you do as a farm. It's a great way to keep you organized. It's a great reference for you and your employees. So when you bring on new staff, it can be helpful to have them read your food safety plan so they become familiar with your farm and your practices. As you mentioned with the audit programs, having a food safety plan can really help to satisfy those buyer requirements. It's a great exercise in thinking about and evaluating the risk on your farm. And it also saves you time and effort so that when spring comes around and it's time to do those employee health and hygiene trainings, it's a great place for you to reference, what do I do? What am I training? How do I go about doing this process? It's just a really great tool for you to have to help your operation run as safely and as efficiently as possible. So considerations for your food safety plan. Your farm is unique. The size, the acreage, the location, the equipment you have, your buildings, the tools you use, your water sources, your employees, your market type, whether or not you have animals on your farm, they all vary from farm to farm, and they're all very specific to you. While neighboring farms might seem similar, every aspect of your farm is unique. So really make sure to tailor your plan to your farm. I see a lot of templates, like the templates are great. I see a lot of people that have copied other farms, but the reality is that your food safety plan is a reflection of your farm, and it should be very specific to you. The crops you have are different too. They have different needs. They're harvested in different ways with different tools. Use different bins, and they're stored in different environments. If you're a monocrop corn farm, you know, the way that you're harvesting, you're storing, you're sending off your produce is a lot different than if you're doing 30 different mixed commodities. So making sure that your food safety plan is tailored to you is very, very important. It's also important that you have a singular food safety person that develops this plan. This person should have a proper food safety training. Like I said, the Produce Safety Alliance grower training is a great tool for food safety managers. It's also important that they have experience. You want somebody that has, if it's not you, you want somebody that has intimate knowledge of your farm. You want somebody that's been farming for a long time and they know, you know, they know how this equipment works. They know how these processes works. You know, you don't want to hire somebody, or you don't want to have somebody that's been on your farm for a year writing your food safety plan when you have plenty of eligible people that have been there for 5 or 10 years that could probably do a better job. It's important that they are willing participants. You don't want to have somebody reluctantly write your food safety plan. In order to really incorporate that culture, you should have somebody that's willing and excited to be this food safety person and this go-to person on your farm. And then they should be supported. I've worked with plenty of farms that have a singular food safety manager that is sort of working alone. None of the other staff really pays attention to them. They're not buying in. And so it's sort of a fruitless endeavor when you have an individual that's trying, but none of the other staff buys into what they're doing. And then this person should be empowered to do their job. If they identify risks on your farm where maybe there's a different process that's needed that takes more time or a new piece of equipment, you as the farm owner should really give them the authority to make those changes to be as effective as possible in incorporating those food safety elements.
Steve, if
Yes.
you don't have any staff on your farm, who should be the food safety manager?
You.
Excellent. Thanks.
No problem. And so in a situation where you are not the singular food safety person, there's a singular individual on your farm, it's always great to have backups. I talk to farms often that don't have food safety plans, and I ask them, what happens if you need to do a recall and you're not around? And they always say that, I'm always around. I'll never not be here. But you don't know. You don't know if there's a family emergency. You might get pulled in a different direction. So it's important that you have a backup that knows how to do these food safety practices if you don't happen to be around. Okay. So the food safety plan parts. So you're going to want a farm description in your food safety plan so that whoever's reading this plan gets a good idea of what your farm does. So your farm name, you want to have your address, your contact information, who the farm manager is if it's not you, their contact information, what commodities you grow, the size of your farm, any other interesting elements to your farm that you think would be helpful should be included in that plan. You're going to want to have risk assessments of the practices on your farm and standard operating procedures to reduce those risks. It is ultimately a tool for analyzing risk and then making sure that you have those processes so that you can mitigate those as best as possible. And you also want relevant records and other logs that document those practices. So if you have farm maps of where your acreage is located, maybe they're farm maps that have your irrigation sources. It's a great place to consolidate your training logs. If you conduct water tests or you have water records from the town, it's a great place to put those. Emergency contact information, buyer information, a comprehensive list of all of the buyers that you sell to, or conversely, supplier lists where you buy all of your equipment or supplies from, and then your recall and traceability programs. So it's really important to have all those elements included in your food safety plan. There is no right or wrong way to organize your food safety plan or to format your food safety plan. The produce safety rule identifies growing, harvesting, packing, and holding activities as those covered activities that you do on your farm. You could organize your plan by those activities. You could organize it by section. This is the most common format that I see, where you have it broken down into elements like personnel qualifications and training, and health and hygiene, and water, and soil amendments, and so on and so forth. It's your food safety plan, so if it works for you, it works for us. I'm not the one that's using this plan, it's you that's using this plan. So make sure that it's effective and convenient for you and as practical as possible. So the first step in developing your plan is assessing those risks. So you're really going to want to review what your farm does. What are those practices and conditions that may pose produce safety risks? Review the farm environment in the adjacent land. Is there a dairy farm upstream from your water source that might threaten your water quality? Does your farm have visitors? Could those visitors wander and cause issues in your fields? Do you have a petting zoo? How do you mitigate the risks associated with the petting zoo? Focus on microbial, chemical, and physical risks. So obviously you want to have SOPs in place that help to mitigate things like salmonella and E. coli and listeria, but then making sure that chemicals like pesticides and herbicides or bleach and cleaning solutions, that those are managed and that those are considered as well. And then physical risks, making sure that lights in indoor buildings are covered and shatterproof, or that your employees aren't using glass water bottles out in the fields. These are all elements that you want to consider when analyzing the risk on your farms. And then determine what practices or elements are higher risk than others. What pose a larger risk, what are smaller risks? And then try and tackle those that are of a higher risk first before identifying those lower risk SOPs. And then keep asking yourself questions. You know, the more you ask yourself what your farm does, the more risks you may come up with. And ask your employees their insight as well, because they might perform tasks that you don't do on a regular basis and provide a perspective that maybe you hadn't considered. It's always good to just keep asking questions and to keep being curious to assess your risk. Oops, sorry. So once you've assessed your risk, you're going to want to develop practices to reduce those risks. So you've identified your food safety risks. Now, how do you mitigate them? You're going to want to formalize and standardize your practices. So if you determine that, yeah, maybe the wash water that I'm using to dunk my leafy greens could get contaminated pretty easily, you're going to want to determine a process where maybe I swap that out on a regular basis. You're going to want to utilize physical resources like new equipment, retrofitting a building, or disposables. So if you have a rodent problem in your wash pack shed, maybe it's time to retrofit that building so that that rodent problem isn't as much of an issue. And then use disposables like paper towels or single-use gloves or soap, things that can help sanitize or clean or keep that risk away as best as possible. You're also going to want to train and empower and trust your employees to carry out these practices. You're not going to be able to be everywhere all the time. You can't do everything all the time. So make sure your employees know what they're doing. They know what these risks are. They know how to mitigate them, and that they have the equipment and tools that to the best of their ability to carry out these practices. And don't try and tackle these big SOPs head on. Try and break them into little tasks, and then utilize risks and people to track that progress and to mitigate those risks as best as you can. Also, make sure that these SOPs work organically in your flow. If you have something that maybe derails you or is not as efficient as possible, you can always change these processes so that they make the most sense in how your farm operates. So the next step is to essentially to start writing this plan. So you've assessed your risks, you've developed these practices to reduce those risks. So start writing them down. The practices you've developed are standard operating procedures. This collection of written SOPs is a food safety plan. And like Emily mentioned before, just start throwing stuff down on paper. Word vomit is totally okay. Nothing is permanent. Feel free to workshop or alter as many times as you see fit. You're not gonna get a perfect plan right from the get-go. So keep writing and keep working and keep altering until you get a plan that works for you and works for your farm. And then make sure you review your plan annually at the very least. You're going to want to factor in major changes on your farm, like if you have new employees or new equipment, if you add animals, if you take away animals, if you utilize a new water source. Your farm is constantly changing. Your food safety plan has to constantly change too. It is a living document and it's never finished. And it's okay to trial and error and to make changes and to make those edits that you need to make sure that your plan is as effective as possible. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm going a little fast, so I just want to make sure that everybody is is kind of caught up, or if they have any questions.
Feel free to take yourself off mute if you have a question, or you can pop your question in the chat. I'm always happy to read questions out for people. Not seeing anything right now.
Cool. So here's an example of working through an SOP. So you have a harvest bin SOP. After harvest, we wash and pack all of our produce. We then take our harvest containers and clean and sanitize them using a sanitate dilution that's approved for food contact surfaces. The harvest crates are then stored. They're uncovered outside that's supposed to be to dry, where they will be used for harvest the next day. So this SOP sounds great. They have a timeline for when they wash their containers. They do wash and clean their containers. They use a specific dilution of sanitate to wash their containers. So, on paper, this sounds like a great solution. But in this situation, they're storing the crates outside, they're not covered. And so the farm every morning comes out and they find animal droppings, they find bird poop, and they find that every morning before harvest, they have to wash their crates again. And so here's an example of, we have this SOP that we thought would work, but it's time to tailor it. And so we amend that SOP to work more effectively on the farm, and to mitigate that risk again. So after harvest, we wash and pack all of our produce. We then store our dirty harvest containers outside overnight. The next morning, we use a sanitary dilution approved for food contact surfaces to clean and sanitize them. Our clean bins then go right out to the fields with harvest crews. So in a situation where an SOP wasn't working, and in an ideal scenario, they would have their bins stored inside, but given the infrastructure they're working with, this is a plan that sort of changes what they're doing to be as more effective than was before.
In the SOP, do you need to call out why you're doing something a certain way? Like, oh, everything gets covered in bird poop if we put it out at night, so that's why we wash them in the morning. Do you need to like specifically say the thing that you're like what you're building the SOP around, or is just having the standards of what you do written in there good enough?
You don't necessarily have to. It can certainly be helpful if you feel compelled to write that much. What I often recommend, I don't have listed in this slideshow. I think because it's definitely not a beginner food safety plan technique or factor, but I always encourage farms to include an update page. So anytime they make a change to their food safety plan, list the change, list what the update was, the reason for the update, and then a date, so they can kind of go back and see, okay, why was this changed, or what did we do here? And it's sort of like a time capsule or an archive or timeline of the changes to your food safety plan. So you can sort of see how it's evolved over time and how your farm has evolved over time. So it's really up to the discretion. Any aspect of a food safety plan is really up to your own discretion and what works for you.
Thank you.
So we saw the survey that a lot of you are very, very new to writing a food safety plan, or or you've taken a stab at it with the draft. Starting a food safety plan from scratch, it's really hard. And so I just want to take this moment to stress that it is totally okay to start out with a rough outline, or a bullet points list and work from there. If you are somebody who's interested in joining the Commonwealth Quality Program, we understand that this is very new to you and this is not something that you had before. And so there's a level of flexibility and understanding that, if you're a first-time farm that's never received an audit or they never received an inspection, like, I do not expect you to have this like totally detailed food safety plan. That, with incremental progress, we will work with you, and outside partners will work with you to sort of build up this plan, until it is something that is satisfactory to you. So like I said, it's okay to start out, like we said, just vomiting words on a page, or just writing a rough outline, or just kind of like doing bullet points of what you do. And feel free to ask us, UMass Extension, New Entry, for any help on templates, formatting, or general advice. And again, remember to focus on what your farm actually does, not what you hope to do someday. So, you don't want to include elements of, I hope to do this. Set timelines, set SOPs that are realistic to you, and then if you feel like you want to improve them, make sure that works first before adding them to your food safety plan. Accuracy is important when it comes to those SOPs, and then make it feasible and attainable. If Don't say you're going to swap out wash water every 15 minutes, and then, after the first 3 times, it's like, you find that you're overwhelmed, or it's a waste of water, or you don't want to do it. Make these SOPs feasible and make them attainable. And then feel free to work on them once you have that as effective as possible. And again, nothing is permanent. So feel free to trial and error and to make changes as you need to make changes.
And on the note of new entry helping, if you've gone through our incubator program, our business planning programs, sell to our food hub, you're high on our priority list for helping you do like a food safety audit or just a risk assessment of your farm. It's definitely easier to do them when you have your wash pack station set up. But you can either ask me or Leah if you're interested in doing that later this year, or keep an eye open. When we have openings, we will let you guys know about it.
Great. So another aspect of food safety planning is traceability. And so again, for those of you where food safety plans are very new, I mean, we just covered like a crash course of assessing risk and writing SOPs and formalizing that plan. Traceability is a big part of what you do for food safety planning, and in terms of records, it's a critical part of your farm. Again, there are farms that we've been working with for 10 to 15 years that still don't have traceability down. Don't expect you to get this right from the get-go. I just want to give an introduction of what traceability is. So it's something that you can start to think about in terms of how you manage your farm and how you have these SOPs. So traceability is where did the produce come from and where did it go? We use the phrase often, one step back and one step forward. And so the idea behind the one step forward, one step back is that you are responsible for those elements. You're responsible for what happens with produce when it's on your farm. You're responsible for knowing where it came from, and you're responsible for knowing where it goes. You are not responsible for knowing where your produce is every step of the way, because that would be ludicrous, especially if there were a number of different steps. So making sure that you have that traceability plan in place and that ideal of one step forward, one step back can really help in that chain of command of where your produce is going. And so in terms of that one step back, if the produce is yours, you want to know what fields did it come from? Who harvested that produce? If you bought product from another farm, you want to know, where did it come from? Did I buy it from this farm? Did I buy it from the terminal market? Did I buy it from wherever? You just want to know where your produce has come from. And then for one step forward, you want to know who your buyer is. How much of this product did you send to them? When did you send it? What vehicle did you use to send it? This information is important for knowing who is in control of your produce right before you have it and right after it leaves your possession. And again, you are not responsible for everywhere your produce goes. So if you're selling produce to Whole Foods, you're sending to the distribution center, and then from the distribution center, it goes to a store, and then from a store, it goes to the consumer. You are not responsible for knowing that produce, what consumer that produce has gone to. You are only responsible for knowing how much of your product has gone to that distribution center. And then that distribution center, in the same ilk of one step forward, one step back, should know where that product goes from there.
Steve, what kind of advice do you have for small farmers who might not have multiple fields? They might just have one small field or producing on less than an acre, for identifying what field their products come from.
It makes it a little bit easier. And I'll cover it as we keep going, but I've seen every aspect of all aspects of traceability programs, from comprehensive like barcodes using computer software to stickers. I think the UMass student farm had a sticker system where they had a gap in there, like the date, the commodity, the field, and yeah, it might have been just this date, commodity, field. So they would harvest their product, they would slap a sticker on, then write the date, they would write what crop it was, and then what field it came from. And that was their traceability system. I had another farm that they grew all of their product in one field. So all of their cabbage in this field, all of their summer squash in this field, all the peppers in this field. And so if it was peppers, they knew it was coming from this specific field. So what they would do is they would stamp the box. The stamp had A, B, C, and D on it. And then around the A, B, C, and D, it had numbers 1 through 31. So the A was June, the B July, the C August, the D September. And so they would stamp and list the date of harvest, the month, and then the day of harvest. And they knew that this product was harvested on this day. And because all of that product comes from one field, it came from, if it was peppers, it came from here. If it was cabbage, it came from here. So traceability systems can be as complex or as intensive, or as sorry, as rudimentary as possible, as long as it works for you. And like I said, I'll get into a little bit more, but it's really up to how much product you would or would not potentially want to recall.
Thank you.
So why is traceability important? So obviously there are food safety elements at play. It allows you to track where a contaminated product goes, so that you can inform consumers of any issues and conduct a recall. So if you have contaminated product, you want to make sure that you can recall that from everybody that's received it. It allows you to monitor quality, any boxes that have had quality issues. It can also have mutually beneficial requirements from food safety and other interests, where it can allow you to track how much product you're selling, and in both profit and volume, for your own financial reasons or tracking. So it just allows you to really get a good sense of how much product you're producing and where it's going, and the volume that is being sent out. Oops. So a big part of traceability is lot codes. And so a lot is defining and following a distinct portion of the crop. And that's such a vague, vague sentence, I know. Oops, I wrote that twice. So, for example, one type of crop harvested on the same day from the same field could be a lot. It could be, this crop that came, if I'm growing all my peppers in this one field, and I harvested on this day, that could be one lot. There's no explicit guidance on how big or how small a lot can be or should be. The question there is that if contaminated product makes it out to the field, the whole lot will have to be recalled. So the bigger the lot, the bigger the recall. So it's really up to you to determine what process works best for you in terms of establishing a lot and a lot code, and then that method for you. So how do you develop a lot code? A lot code can be numbers or letters or a combination of both. It should identify specific details about the lot. So like we mentioned, we talked about, date of harvest, we talked about the product, we talked about the field. It could be farm, it could be field of origin, the harvest date. Those can all be factors. And they should be unique to a specific lot. Lot codes are never reused or used for multiple lots. That code should be specific to this chunk of produce and to no other lots or produce that you're selling. And then, as you mentioned with the traceability aspect, that lot code should follow the lot from your farm to your buyer. So that can be with a stamp, it can be with a sticker, it can be with a tag, invoices. But when you send that product off your farm, that lot code should be accompanying that product, so that one step forward knows what that specific lot is. And again, it needs to work for you, and it needs to make sense of the flow of your farm. You can play around with different methods, but ultimately you're the one that's creating these lot codes. You're the one that's tracking this product. If it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for us. So make sure that that lot code system works for you. So to begin developing a lot code, growers should identify their field locations, the commodities and varieties grown, a method for indicating harvest and or pack date, and then harvest and packing crews. So these are unique identifiers that you could use to separate or determine a lot. So a product from this field, or like head lettuce versus romaine lettuce from this field. Romaine lettuce from this field harvested on this date. So these are all elements that you can use to determine your lot code. And they can also include elements like, again, commodity, farm field or block of origin, the ag inputs applied, the harvest date, the packing date. So those are all things to think about when developing your lot code. And so this next slide, I straight up stole this from the Produce Safety Alliance grower training. This is a great example of how a lot code was determined from elements of the farm. So you see here the lot code 10-01-01-05-284. And so the rationale for that number, you have the farm location from their fields, the 10, Rose Farm, the block 01, the fruit type, they have a numerical code assigned to their fruit. So 01 refers to apples, and then that 05 refers to Empire. And then the harvest date using the Julian date, 284, which then creates that lot code. And then that sticker is affixed to the boxes that the farm then sends out. Oh. And so, like I said, with lot coding and labeling, you should be able to identify every box that leaves your farm. So the boxes that go out, you should know what's in them. You should know where the lot code is. You can affix that label via stickers, tags, stamps. They can be placed on boxes, clamshells, plastic bags, twist ties. You know, it's really up to you again for what works for you. And then a little bit for retail farms. I actually had a farm call me with this question today. You know, a lot of the traceability and the lot coding is very relevant to wholesale farming. But the farm asked me, what happens if I send my product to a farm, but then they sell it out of their farm stand? And we like to make sure that, you know, in situations where you have a farm stand and you're not sending out box of product, make sure the consumers can see your farm name, your address, your contact information when they buy your produce, so that they know that if they get sick, I got my lettuce from this farm, I know their contact information, and I want to call and let them know. And so for consumers, if you have a consumer facing aspect of your farm, whether it's a farm store, a CSA, farmer's market, make sure that information is readily available to them, whether it's on a sign or a receipt or something, so that they know where they got their product from. An important part of the traceability process as well is conducting a mock recall. And so they're great. A recall is necessary if you find that you have contaminated product that's made it out to market. And so it's something that we hope never happens. Unfortunately, it does happen sometimes. So it can really help, given the nature, the urgency of a recall, to actually practice conducting a mock recall so that you can get a sense of how your process works. So in order to conduct a mock recall, you would select a lot code for a product that has been sold. You would call a buyer that's received produce from that lot and tell them that you're conducting a mock recall. You can invent a fake scenario, like it turned out that my tractor was leaking hydraulic fluid and I have to recall this product. You ask them how much they still have and how much has been sold. And then you trace that in your own records to see, okay, do I know where this product came from based on the lot? If you're able to trace it backwards and forwards, then great, you have an effective recall program, you have an effective traceability program. If there are issues where maybe they lost track of your product, or maybe you're not able to figure out where in the fields your produce came from, then it might be time to amend that product and then that process and then try again. But make sure that you record every step of the process so you can get a sense of what worked, what didn't work, so you can tailor that recall process to be as effective as possible.
I'm going to chime in really quick.
Sure.
I know sometimes, especially smaller growers, don't get discouraged if the first person you call to do this doesn't have any idea what you're talking about. Because a small restaurant or whatever sometimes is like, what do you want? I also think sometimes calling it a traceability exercise takes the word recall out of it. So you don't accidentally, because some people miss the mock part. just hear the recall and gets lost in the sauce. But yeah, try and call someone you think for this the first couple of times that you think will respond and give you the time of day, because I sometimes people aren't so nice.
That's a really great point, Leah. Thank you for bringing that up, because I found the same, where I have a lot of growers that, we tell them, we ask them, have you conducted a mock recall, and they'll tell us that they've called 3 or 4 different buyers, and they either refuse to do a mock recall, or they don't know what a mock recall is. Which is funny, because I've talked to people at Whole Foods corporate that are insistent on their growers conducting mock recalls. But then we had a grower in the valley that was selling directly to the Hadley Whole Foods, and he said that they had no idea what that was. So the lack of communication is pretty funny and startling. But totally, I love the phrasing of traceability exercise. And again, please don't be discouraged if you call a couple folks and they're not willing or are not sure what a mock recall is. So
If you sell to us, we're happy to be your we're a willing participant. So mock recall us all you want.
Or mock email, and then we can set up a mock call.
So I just rambled for a whole bunch. And I'm, again, I apologize, because I know that the traceability and the lot code and the mock recall stuff is very, very confusing, and it's really tough, especially to first time food safety plan developers. So I also realized that I didn't put any pictures in this, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry for just looking, and you had to listen to my voice and look at my words for 40 minutes now. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions now. If you have any, if you want help building a food safety plan, or you want somebody to do a walkthrough of your farm, or you have any other questions, or you're interested in joining the Commonwealth Quality Program, these are our inspectors, and they're more than happy to answer any questions you have, or come out to your farm, or help you with the food safety plan. So happy to take any questions, and I'll tolerate any insults. So
Thank you, Steve. If you have any questions, feel free to come off mute, or type your questions into the chat. I feel like that was a really great overview for making a food safety plan. And it always does seem like a lot at first, but we're all here to help. And Leah's going to go through the new entry food safety plan next, and show some of the templates that she likes to use to make things easier. All right. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. I'm not seeing any hands raised. So Leah, do you want to get going?
Sure. I'm going to start off right off the bat apologizing if I start coughing. I'm sick, and I will mute myself so you don't have to listen to me hacking up a lung. But luckily, I can't spread any germs to you. So apologies if I need to pause. But yeah, my name's Leah. I work at New Entry. I'm the farm manager there, and I work with so I guess, yeah, little background. I work with all the incubator growers who are on our property. So we're a quick background if you're not familiar. We have a property that we operate as like a shared growing space. So there's multiple businesses on one property that share infrastructure, greenhouse space, wash pack, cooler, and then we also have a food hub on the property. So for us, we are a unique and annoying thing for poor MDAR to come do any sort of audit at. Because usually it's just one farm, and we are many farms using one plan. So thank you, Steve and company, for tolerating our existence. That being said, it's kind of a fun challenge to come up with ways to make sure that we're still doing things safely on our farm. So let me pull up. When you go to share your screen and you realize you have 5,000 tabs open?
Every day, Leah, every day.
It's like, why do I have so many open? Let me just go to where I meant to go. Get rid of that one. You know, when you think you're prepared. All right. There's my buddy. Sure. Okay. So are we seeing a Word document? Great. So this is, well, like, we don't have to go through each and every part of this, but I think it's kind of like a nice little thing. It shows like it doesn't have to be 10,000 pages long. You'll see some of the templates I have kind of could be quite long. And it really depends what you do on your property and where you end up assessing how much risk you have. So ours cover page says what it is, our name, our location. Those are all important things to have. Who compiled it, who they are on the farm, a way to contact them. Oh, and somehow this is not in the PDF. And then the last time it was updated. So that's something you'll get asked for if you're getting audited. We started off with, basically this first document is all of our different, why did I not open up the PDF? Not important. You guys can look at my underlined things. Basically going through our risks that we've perceived and how we are going to try and mitigate those risks. So it might not list everything, but it's what we went through and said, we probably filled out. I didn't do this initial plan. I inherited it and then helped update it. But I'm saying someone probably sat down, did some kind of word vomit risk assessment, and then said, this is what we think is a risk, identified them on the paper and said, okay, this is what we're doing about it. So we talk about our land use.
Leah, could you click view on your screen?
View?
Yeah, view above the like bold B in the text.
Where?
So under where it says Word Incubator Farm Food Safety Plan 2024 saved to box, there's home, insert, layout, references, review,
Yes.
view. If you go to view,
Layout, references, view. Yep.
and reading view.
Got it.
Thank you.
Is this just nicer?
It's a little bit easier to read. Yeah. Thank you.
Apologies. This is the kind of feedback I want. And you just shout out if you're like, this is dumb, do something different. So yeah, we just basically start off saying kind of our history. At this point, this is from last year. It needs to be updated for this year. We're doing it kind of on a yearly basis. Or like Steve said, if we ever got a new piece of like wash equipment, or we just installed 3 new high tunnels, that's going to have to be reflected in this document and saying, oh, these are the extra risks from that. So basically we have who identifying the farm food safety person, which is me, what our land is like. We lease our land, the size, our deer fencing, what we're producing, how much we're producing that year, greenhouse, like just kind of saying like, this is what we have. And so we have saying like, we talk about our drainage that we have seasonally and how that could be a problem. We discussed how we put in field drainage. And I'm happy to report that after our year of, well, it was not a great year to assess how well our drainage worked, but so far so good.
For anyone who wants to see a slightly bigger version of this, I don't know how to do it in the mode that Leah's in, but on your Zoom, if you have like a trackpad and take 2 fingers and kind of like spread your fingers apart, it'll zoom in on Leah's screen for you.
Did it just get bigger?
Oh yeah, it did get bigger.
Sorry,
is that better, people?
Okay, this is great. It's it's like I always get made fun of for how big I make my font anyways. So here we are.
All right, yes, and people have said that it is better. So thank you, Leah.
Okay, sorry. Let me just move this out of the way. This is like, I don't want anyone to take this and look at it and be like, this is it. like Steve said, it's all very site specific. We're describing that we have coolers. We are describing our area. We're on a suburban road. We're adjacent to woods, and adjacent to preservation land, but that means we have a lot of wildlife. We have a lot of deer. We have a lot of birds. We have a community garden that abuts us, so we have more risk from strangers, but we do have signs and fencing, stuff like this. So it's like we're saying, like, here's our risk reduction. I wouldn't say try and read all of this right now. It's like it's kind of just saying, like, here's your property, describe it, you want to think about your neighbors, you want to think about what kind of things are happening around your property, what's your drain, like, where's the water move from, if there's animals moving through, when are they there, where are they going to be near, and how that could affect you, the farm. So we have a map if you're talking about it just helps you have something for reference. It tells you what things are called. It has north on it, which is nice. I could do a better job and put this like slope and where water moves on it.
But it doesn't always have to be a better job. Sometimes just having it down and there is good.
You can hand draw a map. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. You don't even have to use this. I put a tag on. Ben Zoba saved me because this was made with Google Earth, and this is why it looks so shitty, quite frankly, is because I couldn't figure out how to make lines on Google Earth easily. And there's something called My Maps. It's Google, and then it's an app in Google called My Maps. And you can draw directly on the map in it. Life-saving. So I'm making a new one because this was me trying to, and then I finally just exported it and started drawing on it like a maniac. So Google My Maps, and I have it on a slide later that I could share. We go through like our fertility, our compost and manure, and amendments, how we use cover cropping or higher risk things. So like biological soil amendments of animal origin is one of those big things in that produce safety training you would take. And as like a high risk factor. So kind of tracking when you would use them, where you use them, how you store them is part of your food safety plan. So we say like, okay, well, this is where we get our things. This is why they would be higher risk or lower risk. And that we log all our fertility applications. Same thing with our water, our irrigation. Like we talk about, we have a well, and mostly people use drip, but some people use overhead. And we test that water. Or we say we adhere to FSMA standards for testing water sources. On that note, I don't know if anyone had done the PSA training. If you have, the water rule for pre-harvest water, which is everything used for irrigation and stuff, they finally finalized it. It's a little different. I'm going to a webinar about it again tomorrow, so I actually understand what the new rules are. But if anyone has questions,
there's
let
a
me
quick
know.
question in the chat. Uncertified compost, is that organic certification or is there a compost certification?
That was organic. So we are also certified organic. I mean, I think you would want to ask if you're buying compost from a maker, this might be a chime in from a professional. You can probably get if they're making compost and testing it, like that it's finished compost. It depends how you're using it. If you're using it at least in organic, you have the time frames where you can put manure down. If you're using it in as manure time frames, you're gonna be fine. You're just treating it as manure. But if you're saying like, oh, I sprinkled compost over like these greens and I'm gonna harvest them in 10 days, like, not that you would do that, but it has to be not actively composting at the time. Sorry, Steve, I saw you unmuted. Please help me.
Oh, yes, yeah. So it all depends on your intention with the soil amendment. So like you said, if it's an untreated, as in not commercially composted or not scientifically treated to be completely pathogen free, it is maintaining that 90-120 application interval, which, as far as I've rarely seen anybody that doesn't, most people that spread manure or like untreated like vegetative waste will do so, in fall or December anyway. So, but if it is processed, like I know like Bootstrap or some of those other compost companies that will process, or if you're using something like the Purdue pellets or like fish emulsion or something like that, those typically come with like a letter of guarantee or like a certificate of analysis or something that verifies or validates that it is pathogen free, and in which case you can spread those with a 0-day interval. But unless you have like unless you're buying it from a commercial composter, or if you're composting it yourself, you need to have those turning and temperature records that prove that it is a pathogen free. I don't know if that answered the question. I just word vomited a bunch, but and I can't speak to outside of like the 9120 stuff. I can't really speak to anything in regards to requirements for the organic standard.
I think it's similar with keeping records for your compost. If you don't, you have to treat it like manure.
There's another question, Leah and Steve. Is the water safety webinar open to the general public, and do you have a link? And if you restate what the webinar is, I might be able to find it.
It's not necessarily a water safety webinar. It's just updating. So there's there's a subpart of the produce safety rule in FSMA, which is the federal. If you ever, I think I have a 1-pager explaining FSMA. It can go down a rabbit hole. But basically, originally they had a certain amount of testing you needed to do based on surface water, well water, all these different things. And there was a moment of time where people were dissatisfied with this. There was back and forth, and they came to a conclusion about what they need to do for that. I don't think it would be very helpful for someone who's not either an educator. Like, I think it's mostly for people who teach the course or are kind of like in that space. I think there's plenty of resources that I don't know. Steve, what do you think?
Is it the PSA update webinar?
It's a PSA update. So I think it gets sent out to trainers. So
yeah, it's more geared towards trainers. If you're interested in learning more about the new water rule, the amended water rule, or the produce safety rule in general, I think I just recommend taking the Produce Safety Alliance grower training course. And if you're somebody where the water rule would affect you, you are probably already in contact with us, whether you've already had an inspection or you're anticipating an inspection, in which case that information would be disseminated to you anyway through either an audit or an inspection or like a technical assistance visit. But if you have any general concerns about your water, because ultimately the new water rule is sort of just a risk assessment model where you just review your pre-harvest water sources and kind of determine like it's good or it's not good. So
and then if it's not good, then you do a comprehensive kind of risk evaluation and come up with ways to mitigate them. But yeah, I think even there's some great summaries on the Cornell PSA section website where they go through all of those bits. So I would start there, if that helps. Sorry, that was an aside.
They said yes, thank you.
Okay. So yeah, we were just talking about our water. Our next kind of thing was like our harvesting practices. We have containers, we have tools, what we do to mitigate risks with containers. We are big, this is, I guess, I'm very big on harvest containers are harvest containers and storage containers are storage containers, and never the twain shall meet, just so that they can live their own separate lives and kind kind of just stay in their own zone, and you're not having to, I don't know. I feel like harvest bins get dirtier and harder to clean, and then trying to get those to be inside bins. I don't know. That's just how I manage that risk. So basically saying soil can contain pathogens if you have them on your bins and you're bringing them into the wash station and then stacking a dirty bin or putting your produce into a bin that had dirt on it. You're like, how are you dealing with that? So same thing with harvest tools. We talk about that. Wildlife incursion. What is our kind of like, how are we dealing with that? So we talk about like, one, if we are seeing, kind of, we see wildlife, we stated that earlier, quite a bit, but we're very lucky to have all of our ag fields enclosed in a nice tall deer fence. It doesn't keep the smaller creatures out, but we've really only had, in the time I've been here for going on a 5th season, I think like 3 deer get in, and you notice real quick, and it's a fun game trying to get them out. But we're saying, like, because of our unique situation, we have a lot of farmers on our plots that are quite small, and the odds of us spotting and identifying wildlife incursion are very high because people see their whole field, their whole farm, pretty much every time they're there. So
And just to interject
basically-
quickly, this food safety plan has gone through CQP certification, and we are CQP certified at New Entry. And as you'll notice, there are bullet points in here. So it doesn't need to be like overly fancy or overly complicated. You can see here, like pets are not allowed on the New Entry site. Signs are clearly posted that state that. That is perfectly fine. CQP certifiers, we're fine with that. So perfection is the enemy of done and good here.
Yeah, and like, that's the risk. Pets can be vectors for disease. Pets are not allowed. Done. Risk mitigated. Like, and how do we get that point across? We post signs, just like, well, what will stop someone from bringing them? We have a sign. If someone brings their dog, we can say, hey, get out of here. We have a sign. I don't say it that way quite. Sometimes I yell from a tractor, so I can be more mean than I like, and people don't realize that I'm being mean because I'm yelling from a tractor. Livestock, we don't have it. We brought it up because it was on a list of things. We probably don't even have to have this on here because we don't have livestock. It's probably there because we technically could allow livestock for growers here, but it is not an option anyone's taking us up on, and I am secretly very, very glad. I don't want to deal with it. So we went through our harvest. Here we are. So that was like harvest. The pests were brought up because it was something you would come up against in harvest. So we're into cooling, wash pack. So we're talking about what our tables are made out of, what we're washing in. So we have 50 various gallon bins, between 50 and 100, depending on the bin. We're saying our farmers' operation is small, so they're pretty much always washing one crop at a time. So their kind of flow into the wash station is very simple. And then we have cleaning routine in there. And basically we're saying we have a cleaning routine. We describe it a little bit, but we have an entire wash station guide that are in SOPs that are posted in the the wash station. Everyone gets copies of those. We go over those in our health and hygiene training. Yeah. But that's like pretty simple. We're saying like deep cleaning is conducted in season. So we're saying twice a year, we really go in and we're freaking scrubbing with toothbrushes, but we will do this if it's needed. And I would say this is one of my favorite words in a food safety plan: if deemed necessary. Someone has to decide. It's you. Talk to your auditor about it. There are some things that have more regulated frequencies, but a lot of stuff is like as necessary, and you just have to outline what it means to be necessary. Wash, we talked about water is a big deal, and our wash water is town water. So we get a report from the town that you can request. Still rodent management in the wash station. We talk about how we keep all our compost out. It's in a greenhouse structure. We'll put out traps if we start seeing rodent activity. And we check the traps if we have them. But we're not baiting in the greenhouse or in the wash station just because, I don't know. That's a hard one. It's like, you should trap them, but how do you trap them? With bait? Well, that's how they get there, because it's kind of the outside. But talking about our cold storage. So it's basically going through a vegetables journey in a day. This is everyone's favorite, traceability. I'll say we have a cop out. We sell all our food through the food hub. So we have our own we have our harvest records, and we label our bins with the date of harvest, what they are, and we do use a lot number now, and that has to be updated in here. That is just the Julian date with a dash in the year. And that just is like, so everything harvested in one day is a lot. We're comfortable with that if there was a recall. I don't know, this feels very boring. I did not think about how boring this could possibly be of me scrolling through a document. So I'm just going to speed up a little bit. But basically, we're just like hitting different risk sections, talking about what we think is risky in our space and kind of how we address it. And then from there, what we've made, I'm going to stop sharing that, is a group of, let me start sharing again. Basically, here's all our SOPs. So from there, we made SOPs. So these are a little more like do exactly these things. And if you need to keep a record for it. And so like, this is the more detailed, like, oh, this is cleaning and sanitizing produce contact surfaces. Who should be doing it? When should you do it? What are material, like, so if you're getting supplies ready for it, where are they? And a procedure. Same thing, cooler. I don't know why that number's still there. See, you find things all the time. And this is where you kind of like do the little nitty gritty thing, but I feel like in the first document, it's a little more, it's wordier. It's more telling the story of your property and what can go wrong and how you're going to stop it from happening. But yeah, I will stop. I also, Emily, do we want to pause before I just share my templates?
You can see if there's any questions. You can share your templates. There's a thank you for sharing your SOPs. Yeah. I also just figured out a quick way to make an SOP from a picture of your, if you like draw out a diagram. If you know me, you might be able to guess what my sheet is. It's ChatGPT. So I could share that, or if you want to do templates first, that
yeah, I'm gonna get to a point that there's resource. It's a very short little presentation, so you can add that at the end.
But at the ChatGPT at the end.
Yeah, because we can add it to the template and let me share my screen. This is where I get wrong. Can you see this?
Yes.
And I just called it templates. What is good about them and where they can get you in trouble? And Emily, I followed your advices. Pick a fun PowerPoint template, and then it wasn't as fun. But templates, just a quick, I said pros, gives helpful prompts and instructions. They outline many of the things you need in a food safety plan. They can be a great reference point. And the best one, they already exist. It's nice. It's not something you have to come up with yourself. A con, they can be overwhelming. There's a lot of information on there. Copy and pasting could get you in trouble. I've seen people like take a whole template and just kind of take the name out, put their name in, and all of a sudden they're promising to do things they've never done before. They could be out of date or out of compliance, or in the wrong compliance. There's a lot of different audit programs out there. And I think Steve touched on that a little bit in the beginning. CQP is one of them. There's harmonized GAP, there's USDA, there's all these different audit programs in the world, and you kind of want to make sure you're in the right area for what you're trying to do. And they're not specific to you. So you know your farm the best. So trying to shove your farm into a template that was not made for anyone's farm specifically is hard. So this is called templates I enjoy. We'll just take a quick look at one of them. So this one's from the University of Minnesota. Did it follow? Like, are you at the okay, great. And now I'm going in reading view. I've learned.
Thank you.
Welcome. And now I'm zooming. Oh, too far. So food safety plan for you. Good times. Oh, this one's older. It's 2011, but again, a good place to start. Funding, disclaimer, etc. So a lot of this is very common for the beginning of a lot of templates. People had to beg for grant money just to help people to become food safe. So, but like, see how long that is? You might not have to go through every little bit of that. You have to pick with what you're doing. But I like this one just because they do take the time in the beginning of it to explain the process. And my favorite part about it is them going through the map, and they have a very good, like, here's a template, but here's how you use our template, which I think sometimes templates don't have that, and you're kind of left to just kind of fill in some blanks. Yeah, it just feels supportive. It's a very supportive document. Yeah, and I like how they go through the mapping. So like how you should do your map, what you should include. They even show, like, look at this chaos, that's allowed. You know, so that's why I like that one. Let's go back. This is where what happens when you leave your PowerPoint. There we go. Can you see that again? Great.
And we'll be sharing all this out after
yes, I
the
can send this
workshop.
out.
Yeah.
So there's ones like that, or there's this one is the Cornell one. This one's a popular one. So just to familiarize yourself with the word I'm looking for, the environment of
The format, the layout,
the layout,
world.
the lay of the land. So we'll just do a quick, like, go through the whole thing. This one's a little more, it kind of tells you some things, acknowledgements, like I said, and then things that you should have handy. This is actually a great list, and maybe I'll take it out separately for your brain dumping. This is a great brain dump list. Like, find all these things if you have them. Yeah, very similar. This one's different colors. Like, you just kind of have to look through a few and find what makes sense for your brain. Everyone looks at things differently. Everyone learns differently. This one, we have one that's on SOP writing, an SOP template. This SOP template's fun. I like this one. It's communities remain, and it kind of just breaks down like, what are you trying to write an SOP about? Why, what's the purpose, scope? And it kind of just like helps you break it down into those little bits. And kind of, there you go. You wrote an SOP.
Steve, if somebody filled this template out and had it as part of their food safety plan on their farm, would it pass CQP, or would they be like, you should probably take the main header off of that?
I mean, yeah, especially if it's somebody that like this is their first go to food safety plan. I mean, what really matters is the SOP itself. So you can put whatever. I mean, I think for a while we might have had, I could be wrong. We might have had templates with the UMass logo, or templates with the Penn State logo, or templates with the Cornell logo. Like I mean, templates, like, right? Templates have their pros and cons. But for somebody that's just starting out and looking for something, like if they have a template with the University of Maine logo on it, but all the content is their farm, their SOP, their risk assessments, like that's fine with me.
I will say one great and kind of like underappreciated thing about an SOP and a food safety plan is like, especially if you have employees, like this is an excellent opportunity to standardize how you do things on your farm and share it with people. Your food safety plan isn't a document just, or it could be a document that's just for an audit or to, make sure you're doing things safely, but it's a great way to organize everything, all the operations on your farm, and kind of assess where they touch each other and what personnel are crossing over and like what efficiencies you have and what can be improved. So it's like, it's a good opportunity to do a lot of things, and SOPs go a long way in standardizing your operation, and a good way to say, okay, we tried it this way. And actually we noticed, like with the bins, they were saying, oh, we were washing these bins, putting them outside, they're getting pooped on, and we're washing them again. Why are we doing this labor twice? And they saved time and said, nope, we only do it before we wash them. So that's just a plug for SOPs in general.
Totally. And I think it's a food safety plan is kind of like a cookbook where the SOPs are sort of like recipes, and there could be something that you've cooked 1,000 times and you're like, yeah, I know how to do this like the back of my hand, but you go back and you check the recipe and you're like, okay, I forgot this one little ingredient, or I messed up this little time. Like at the very least, it's just a reference for you to sort of refresh your memory and to make sure that what you're doing is actually what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So I'll just go on. Some other useful things. Here's the Google My Maps. I love it. It's my new favorite thing. I'm having a great time. I'm a huge fan of the University of Vermont Ag Engineering School resources. They do all sorts of great stuff all over like the farm spectrum, but they do have something called Scrub, which is sanitizing and cleaning resources for your business, that are very fun. And they've made all sorts of videos and resources, so check them out. I have a risk assessment table here that's just like, it's in table format, and it goes through like, oh, your fertilizer, your water, whatever. It's a nice way to kind of like, again, brain dump where you think you might have risk, and kind of prompts you so that you're considering things you might not have thought about before. Other useful things, the good people of UMass Extension, they've done a lot of fantastic work in this. Don't be afraid to check out what they have online, and all their resources they've created. And also the MDAR team, I think of them as reducators, not just regulators. They're not like busting down doors being like, your spinach is disgusting, shut them down, put them in jail. Like, every interaction I've had has been so positive. Every audit is, they come in, you're going through things, you're talking about it, you're coming up with solutions. Um, it's like an organic expression. You're never going to come out and someone's going to say that was perfect. Like, as like from their perspective, if every audit they went on and they were just saying everything's perfect, they're going to lose their job. Like, that's just not true. And you're not going to get shut down for like a small thing, especially if you're like, oh, I'm correcting it. Yeah, maybe if you're like knowingly pumping water out of, I don't know, you're like, this is my septic system and I pump it over here. Like, that might be something you get in bigger trouble for. But yeah, we're lucky to be, at least if you're in Massachusetts or in the Northeast, I feel like have a very good auditors that are out to help and get people up to standards and not just be out there shutting people down. So don't forget that.
There's a quick question in the chat. Should farmer market SOPs and food safety be included?
I mean, let me stop sharing. A farmer's market is a place where you're handling produce, and you probably want you or your workers to understand what problems there can be for contamination or other food safety risks, and trying to reduce those. And then again, same thing with like a sign. You have to have identify yourself and where you're coming from and how to contact you. But I don't know if that's exactly what you're asking, or just like that should be included in your food safety plan. Just going to the
If it should
farmer's
be
market.
included, the SOPs that you would usually use, I think, for your farmer's market, and like the food safety stuff that you follow at the farmer's market, I believe is what they are asking. Yes, if it's just included in the plan.
I'm deferring to Steve. I think so, but
you certainly can. It's one of those things where like we don't have jurisdiction over farmers markets. In the same way that some farms will do, like they make apple cider, or they will do pure like peeled butternut. Once it becomes like food processing, or like even like the retail stands, like that's not our jurisdiction either. So you certainly like I certainly visit farms that have like a food safety planning for their processed foods, but I don't look at it, but I'm sure it can help. Like again, the plan is for you. So if it helps you to have all of your, your on-farm produce safety stuff in the plan, as well as your farmers market produce safety stuff in the plan, then like go to town. Whatever works best for you.
Great. We're just about out of time. There's a question, will you be including how to sign up for produce safety program training? Yes, I will include a link for that in the resources I send out after the workshop. There will be, and a quick reminder, there will be a survey that pops up after the workshop. Please fill it out. It really helps us. And they're very, very quick. I make them so quick because I know that filling out surveys is a pain, but we just want to know, was the workshop good? Did you learn something? And if not, that's good for us to know so we can do something different next time. And I will send out what the work is to do for next time in an email so you have it all nice and listed out. And my closing note is just my plug for ChatGPT again. Leah, did you want to add something in before
no,
I do
I was
that?
just saying in the chat, Lisa McKeague, who is a UMass extension person and like the one lead trainer for the produce safety training left in the state, put a link to the UMass food safety resources in the chat. So I trust her.
And Lisa's also saying that if you're interested in PSA trainings, to share your email with her and she'll add you to the list of people that she reaches out to. All right, so here's my quick ChatGPT plug. So this here, can you guys see my screen and see a wash station set up? Yes? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So say you make a diagram, you can make it hand drawn, take a picture of it, or just have some sort of diagram of like what's happening in your wash station. You can go to ChatGPT, upload this file. This is a PDF. You can also do pictures. and say, this is our farm's wash station. Please always use please when you're talking to the AI because we never know when they're going to take over. Please make an SOP for food safety purposes. And that's just all I'm going to give it. So that's a think a little bit. And it's got a pre-operation checklist. Washing and sorting produce. Feels like it's spitting out stuff that, Leah, correct me if I'm wrong. This seems like stuff that you would have on an SOP, right?
I mean, a lot of them might all be their own SOPs. That's a lot for one SOP.
But even if you do get something like this out of ChatGPT, it's good to just like double check to see what it's saying. But I feel like it's got a good start for
it's the
just
same as like, don't just put your name in a template. You can't just let the computer make it for you.
Okay, so I know I'm saying it's the computer make it for you, but it is still basing stuff off of the picture that you share with it. Post-operation cleaning, worker hygiene and training, record keeping. If you wanted to get fancy, you could also be like, this is what is required for CQP certification, SOPs, and it will change things to do that. So with that said, I can stop sharing my screen. I think that brings us to the end of this workshop. I will send out the next steps for the next workshop that we do, where we go over what you guys have come up with so far for your food safety plans. And I'll share out all the resources, and this video will go up on YouTube once I get to it, hopefully in the next day or two. So thank you, Steve and Leah, for giving great presentations. And thank you, Lisa, for grabbing emails and reaching out to people. And thank you all for coming and hanging out and talking about everyone's favorite fun thing, food safety.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.